Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Kieley, CEO of SourceDay. SourceDay is the industry-leading cloud-based software solution that automates the purchase order management process for manufacturing and distribution companies to manage their direct spend. Tom, I'm so excited to chat with you, not only because of your experience in the startup space and the companies and what you've gained in terms of operating successful companies and what you're operating now, but also this interesting thing about not only manufacturing distribution, but this idea around managing spend, which is becoming so hyper important with all companies, regardless of industry, because of the macro climate, because of whether it's VC funding or you're looking to operate a little bit more efficiently. A lot of companies are really focusing on how to manage that spend and the different process that either take up a lot of resources or could use more injective resources based on other things. But before we get into all those fun topics, what were you doing before you started SourceDay?
Yeah, I appreciate that overly generous introduction and excited to be here today. Thanks for the time. I had a roundabout career getting into entrepreneurship and co-founding SourceDay with my co-founder, Clint, but immediately before SourceDay, I was selling enterprise, so mostly B2B software, SaaS, of course, cloud, since kind of cloud has existed. But I started my first software company in 2008. It was completely bootstrapped, nights and weekends, working hours of 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. with a sole developer who's actually still with us than SourceDay is today. And got a great deal of exposure to those founders of those organizations and really the journey that they had getting from startup to exit and being acquired by Dell was an incredible experience for them. And being a part of that was an eye opener for me. And really part of that is what helped me drive my need to go create RightGift and just knowing that I had this desire to go do something different. And while I had a great career at Dell, I knew that I was a little bit higher risk profile than most of my peers and felt like I needed to go do something to kind of feed that hunger. Took many years of experience. I mean, watching those companies that Dell acquired get integrated into that culture and that motion of selling into enterprise and learned a lot about that. But then met my co-founder, Clint, as I mentioned earlier, who ran a manufacturing company for 10 years here in Austin, Texas, and experienced many of the struggles that I experienced early on in my Dell manufacturing days with just supplier visibility on parts and materials that need to be in place at the right time, at the right quantity, at the right price so that you can actually fulfill your customers' orders. So it was his vision and my background and experience in building technology from the ground up that brought us together to create an enterprise platform to really even almost create a category in an already defined large spend management category that you mentioned, but specifically for the direct material spend, which is the components, pieces, and finished goods that go into final products.
Yeah. And what is the issue with supplier visibility? Is it tracking the difference in prices or over different time or given time periods? Is it the comparison between different suppliers? Is it cataloging that information? Where's the gap of understanding? Is it on a technology level? Is it on a recording level? Yeah, where is that gap and why is it so hard to see that supplier visibility?
Yeah, it's a great question. When we went to market in 2015 with our first product that we've continued to evolve and grow and expand upon today with over 250 customers globally, the customers that, before SourceDay, they're using Excel, email, manual processing. And really it's the concepts not of indirect spend management, which is better known through SAP Ariba and Coupa and other players. It's a very large market managing spend and expenses and travel and those pieces, very critical spend that needs to be managed and accounted for. What was happening for manufacturers, retailers, distributors, direct-to-consumer product brands is once they had these very sophisticated ERP systems, so think Microsoft, Dynamics, Oracle, SAP, NetSuite, Epicor, Infor, those ERP have, getting really into the weeds here, they have what's called demand planning engines or MRP. And those demand planning engines are actually using sales forecasts, inventory levels, lead times, bill of materials, all different data points that basically drive and predict procurement demand. And that procurement demand is ultimately created in the form of a purchase order. So these ERPs will create a purchase order demand. And then our customers pre-SourceDay would take those POs in either Excel, email, PO, fax in some cases that we still see even to this day, get sent to their suppliers globally, and then have hopes of really getting those every single PO line, which could have 10, dozens, hundreds of PO lines per PO, get those parts and pieces on time and in full. So if you have 10 lines on a PO, each line may have several quantity per line, and you need all of those components to fulfill your sales orders and your sales demand. So all of that is a lot of moving parts and pieces and materials. Even if you're selling one simple product all the way to somebody manufacturing fuselages for airplanes, you have a lot of components and suppliers, and you rely on every single part down to a penny part so that you can actually assemble, ship, kit, manufacture, drop ship, whatever your business may be, your finished and final products to then absolutely recognize revenue. So what our data has shown and what we knew when we built SourceDay was that all of these POs have significant change throughout their life cycle, from when the demand gets created all the way through to when the supplier ships the products. Over 68% PO change data across that, which is generally uncaptured in risk.
Wow. And when you describe the PO thing, what does that stand for one more time? What was that?
Yeah, it's a purchase order. So it's just a physical document that it'll have simple T's and C's, ship to, instructions, payment terms, but most importantly, it will have the line items that basically dictate, here's the manufacturing part numbers, the quantities, the SKUs, the dates that you want them to arrive by, prices, etc. Critical data that you need as a manufacturer.
Yeah. And what's the difference in how quickly, say, a PO can change versus the whole entirety of that order being fulfilled, the initial order, in terms of understanding what the order is, getting your materials from your supplier, building the products, kitting it, shipping it out. What's the difference between those times?
Yeah, it's going to be wild, right? So, I mean, we have customers that range all the way from health and beauty apparel all the way to large aerospace, defense, packaging, oil and gas, a medical device, you name it. And the lead times can vary. Sometimes we have customers that have a single day lead time. The PO gets cut and the parts show up the next day. That's in the best case scenario. Most customers' parts, as we saw get highlighted through COVID, really is weeks to months and sometimes even year plus long lead times. Yeah. So a PO needs to be cut well in advance, and then also have very tight communication and collaboration with the supplier and the buying team to know, when can I expect those parts and components to show up, and really get down to the nitty gritty of, hey, if you can't ship me 100% today, we do some split lines, meaning we'll take the line, split it into 10 releases and ship on 10 different dates so that I can get them as quickly as possible and then start to ship and manufacture a kit and get my orders out the door. So it's highly complex, a lot of changes. And really, the buyers, without any technology outside of the ERP systems, are unsung heroes that are chasing parts, chasing suppliers, chasing updates, chasing shipments, so that they can go and tell the shop floor, sales, finance, operations, here's what you can expect, here's what we can forecast we can actually ship, and here's the revenue we can expect to recognize this quarter. Without that collaboration and without that visibility, while it sounds super unsexy to say we're just pushing POs and line items back and forth, that's really the lowest common denominator. If customers don't have good data and good quality around what parts they can expect to show up when, they have zero predictability.
Yeah. And just if you, I don't know if you have any numbers or if you could touch on this, what are some of the negative outcomes, the consequences of not having that understanding, or for things to change in a split second? If you have this order that's, say, you're waiting on this product, you're waiting on the materials, and then things change, what are some of the negative outcomes? Is it having oversupplied on some particular, I don't know, ingredient or information, or what are some of the negative outcomes that you see?
Yeah, it's a great point, a great question. Just think a couple of different options, right? So if you're a consumer and you go to the store, your local grocery store or another big chain, big box store, and the shelves are in, that big box store didn't anticipate those shelves to be empty, right? They're typically expecting auto replenishment and auto fulfillment of orders from their tier 1 suppliers. Those tier 1 suppliers, however, they rely on tier 2 and tier 3 other suppliers. And if the tier 1 manufacturer a health and beauty product didn't get the packaging material they needed to ship their finished product, they can't put product on the shelves at a retailer without packaging. So the simple kind of complexities of all of the pieces and components that go into getting a finished product on the shelf in a store. It's not just the ingredients, it's the labels, it's the packaging, the shipping, the boxes, the containers, freight, everything that goes into it to get it to the shelf. If any one of those suppliers or critical components misses at any quantity, then you're going to have empty shelves. Going into a business experience, we have customers in aerospace and oil and gas and automotive that, short of actually chartering a private jet so that you can actually have parts sent to you the moment they're available from the supplier so that you can keep your manufacturing line running. Because every minute your manufacturing line is down, it's an opportunity cost. It's a hard dollar cost. You've got to send people home, and then you've got to pay overtime and run extra shifts, longer hours, longer days to catch up on the lost time. So it's not having that visibility and predictability of what you can build, when you can build it, what you can ship, what you can expect to be able to deliver to customers that you rely on from your suppliers that are outside of your four walls. They don't have your visibility to data, and you need to bring them as close to your business as possible.
Yeah. And it seems like it would affect anyone, whether or not the life cycle for something to transact is in a day or in a few months. If it's a few months, delay can cause an issue with your current client base, even if it's a high ticket item, or if it's a low ticket item that transacts at a high volume. If you don't have that volume of supply, then your buyers are going somewhere else. So it seems like imperative for everyone to have this intelligence. And tell us a little bit more, the audience, how is SourceDay solving that problem? How are you shrinking the time of communication and information sharing, but also what kind of outcomes are you seeing that your company that you're working with in that positive direction, and not only knowing more about that life cycle, but also maybe even strategizing around how they could better predict what their supply is going to get and how they can serve their customers?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a wildly varying different amount of problems and challenges that we solve. Right. Some of the most common challenges we solve are organizations just simply overbuying material, right? So that they can ensure they don't have a stock out, whether it's nuts and bolts, capacitors, chips, tires, wheels, whatever it may be. They oversupply, right? So they keep excess inventory, in some cases 3-4x the inventory that their systems say they need. And they do that just to hedge and make sure I'd rather not run out. The challenge behind that is it's not just the capital costs, right? You now have to pay storage, warehousing. You have people costs behind all of that. You've got taxes and insurance costs behind all of that. The costs continue to climb the more you inventory and more you warehouse. And then you also have parts that become obsolete, and now you've got scrap that you have to waste. So in a lot of ways, we help some of our customers where they have shelf lives on some of their parts and materials where they just simply become obsolete. We're helping them have less scrap, less waste. So in a world where environmentally friendly organizations are trying to do their best and do their part and not waste and not having too much scrap, we're legitimately helping those organizations have a more just-in-time manufacturing process where they don't have too few parts and pieces and materials, hopefully, but they certainly don't have too many, too much, right? Yeah. So where you have to go scrap and resell or just simply throw away and put it in the landfill. So a lot of our customers, what we're helping them do is that the demand for the procurement of the parts and pieces or finished goods that they're buying, it gets driven by sales forecasts. Now, the challenge is those sales forecasts change at a high volatility, right? So it may say this customer's canceled their order. This customer wants their order faster. I need it now instead of in 6 weeks. And this customer say, hey, I think I've found some orders. I can push this order out, so I don't need it for 6 months. So don't ship it yet, but it's still a valid order. So those are what's better known as move in, move outs, and cancellations. And that can happen across tens of thousands of PO lines at any given moment. And when you don't get that data in front of your suppliers to take action on it, they're just shipping based off that stale, stagnant PO PDF copy that you sent them back on day one. And so what SourceDay is driving for these customers is real-time, high-quality orchestration of those changes that the demand engine is proposing, if you will. And so we've helped customers save as much as $100+ million in push-outs and cancellations of buying parts and pieces that they otherwise didn't need right now. And otherwise had they not given those signals to the suppliers, those would show up, they'd sit in inventory, they'd become scrap, they'd become waste, they'd become capital cost. And now you're impacting your cash flow, right? So you're You're already potentially needing to use that cash to go get more customers or to pay and hire and grow more team members, but you've got it tied up in capital and inventory costs that you can't do anything about. So we help our customers have much more communications with suppliers on real-time demand as it's changing. As a statistic, we've processed hundreds of billions of dollars in spend through our platform. And what's come from that really is, again, 68% of the POs that we process experience at least one change, meaning a date change, a price change, cancellation, a push out, and then 6 to 12 changes on average per PO. And those changes going unrecognized or uncaptured, you now as a buying organization or even as a supplying organization are operating under over half of the data being inaccurate at any given moment. So you're either going to be spending too much or spending too little when you need to be.
Yeah. Sounds like a nightmare situation either way. I mean, if you're not tracking well. And I'm curious, what is SourceDay doing better than the incumbent before, better than other ERPs? And what I mean by better is delivering information more quickly, making changes more available, and also collaborating, it sounds like, across different tools of information from different suppliers that you can actually gain insights without having to go through and compare yourself or purchasing yourself. How are you doing it better than other ERPs in those categories?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll clarify, right? We're partnered with ERPs in kind of extending the power of the data in the ERP with the suppliers. So we don't compete with ERPs. We actually have tight bi-directional integrations, meaning we read data out of our ERP partners' ERP system, and then we write data back in real time. So every day we're reading millions of PO lines into SourceDay's platform. And our platform is a true single instance multi-tenant network. So think of it as if you're a buyer organization A, and you've got 100 suppliers, each one of those suppliers more than likely in our platform supports 10, 20, 50, 100 other customers. So if you're a supplier, you log into SourceDay, you're going to be managing more than one customer's orders in a single place, giving you better visibility and tighter, more accurate data on what you should be shipping as a supplier. This prevents you from undershipping to the customer's needs. It prevents you from overshipping to customers' needs and then having to accept returns. All of those things cost money. And in today's market, it's a highly competitive world. If you are a buyer and you need to go pivot from one supplier to another supplier because they're just not performing, it's not that complicated to go and find another supplier that can meet your needs. So SourceDay is driving accountability between the buyer and the supplier using true, actionable, objective, and measurable data points. So we capture scorecard data that shows how are your suppliers performing against your order demand with their true actions, not subjective data, but we literally can show here's their on-time and full delivery. Here's how many changes that they've put onto your system. Here's how much price variance they've impacted you, either good or bad. Here's their lead times as they're trending. And we can also start to show aggregate data. So we can show you anonymized supplier aggregate data to see here's how you're performing buying these parts and component commodities compared to other organizations that are buying the same components and commodities. So now you can see, are your lead times better or worse than the market? Is your on-time delivery from those suppliers better or worse on those commodities? Price variance, are you paying more or less than the market rate? And start to really have good, visible, and predictable data that our platform, and because it's a network, enables the power of having true buyer and supplier accountability based off of actionable behavior.
Yeah. It's incredible to see that amount of insight, being able to strategize, but also make the best decisions for your company, your organization, whether you're on the buyer side or supplier side. And I'm curious, how has that already changed behaviors? You mentioned changing for buyers that leave changing suppliers to someone who can satisfy the orders. It now becoming increasingly easier. You have a lot more insight. But how does that change other behaviors from the buyer's perspective and from the supplier's perspective in a more efficient, productive way? As that's what it seems like, right? More information faster, learning how to adjust and being able to make those decisions. What are behaviors that you see on both sides that are extremely positive and productive?
Yeah, it's a great question. I liken it back to before Salesforce was really measuring and tracking and monitoring sales effectiveness and specifically sellers' effectiveness. All that data lived in Rolodexes and notes and journals where sellers were keeping track of their opportunities. Then Salesforce came around and you had a cloud platform that really gave visibility of that. So SourceDay is that, but in a network fashion where it's one organization buying from hundreds of suppliers, and then you multiply that hundreds of times over. So we have over 16,000 suppliers in our network, selling to over 250 customers in our network. The customers are the buying organizations that are using SourceDay to really get out of Excel and email and manual processes so that they can actually have accountability that, to your point, then change behavior. So the number one kind of most simplistic thing that any buyer, supplier, purchase order relationship should do gets down to kind of the nitty gritty of when you cut a purchase order, you send it to a supplier, the supplier at a minimum should raise their hand back to you and say, hey, I've seen it and I'm processing it. That happens almost never. Good suppliers, they do that. The other suppliers, as busy as they are, it's hard for them to do that, right? They've got hundreds of thousands of customers and they're processing orders for all of them. So it's giving them a tool that allows them to have better connectivity and collaboration with their buying customers, which then also enables and empowers them as a supplier to perform at a higher level. So buyers' orders are constantly changing. As a supplier, you've got to keep up with Excel version iterations, email updates, who's got the most recent source of truth, who owns the most recent action item, what am I actually supposed to be shipping to who and when and to where. So our platform has changed the behavior of it now becomes the source of truth for a supplier to know what they need to ship, when they need to ship it. And if something has changed, there's an audit history trail that shows the behavior of those changes.
Yeah.
And going back to the acknowledgement, we've got data that can kind of show a story or a line of suppliers will try to do the best they can when they initially acknowledge, but inevitably they have to come back and push a date out or cancel an order or change the price. And that's just normal behavior. It's not something they're doing maliciously, but it starts to give trends and data around what are the true actual lead times for components, what's the actual and true pricing for components that aren't contractually set, and how can we as a buying organization start to be more predictable when we need to go buy from our suppliers and our partners to help them be more successful and help them deliver a better result to us in our partnership of being a buyer and a supplier. So that the behavior starts to drive predictability and a tighter, more expectation-driven network and relationship.
Yeah. And just thinking, I know you mentioned it earlier, but tell us a little bit more about the traction. How many customers you have? You've mentioned a number earlier. We'd love for you to reiterate that. What the traction you've seen thus far, and what are you particularly excited about in terms of the next stage of SourceDay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been told we were a category creator in kind of the direct material procurement space, where we're the only purpose-built supply chain collaboration procurement platform that's orchestrating real-time changes at a very detailed, demand-driven level with suppliers and buyers. So we have over 250 customers, primarily headquartered in North America today, and then over 16,000 supplier organizations globally using SourceDay to fulfill purchase order demands to their customers at a more on-time and more accurate cost. So excited about the data, what we're doing with our customers and how we're helping them have more predictable, more accurate data in terms of being more lean, not buying in excess, not buying too little, and ensuring that they can fulfill their customer orders really at 100% fulfillment rate at the lowest cost possible. And that means not overbuying an inventory and having extra warehouse space you have to rent and all the costs associated with that. So the data that we're doing behind all of that is incredibly powerful and otherwise impossible to capture because it lives in fax, email, Excel documents. I've even heard customers more recently say that they print, handwrite on each PO line notes, scan it, and then send it back to the supplier. That's just not scalable. Right.
The nightmare.
It's fast things roll. Everyone wants instant gratification and they want everything the minute they order it. And we have the technology to help make that more valid and more of a reality.
Yeah. Yeah. It also seems like an expectation isn't met. The communication between resetting that expectation, even that much more important for everyone to be in line with the objective, which is awesome to hear. What are some of the biggest risks that you think SourceDay faces today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, we're going into some even more uncertain economic times. So you got to hope for the health of these organizations to continue to invest in technology. I think the most powerful thing is we have experienced some of the highest and fastest growth that we've had over the last 3 years. And we're fortunate to also have just raised a Series C round of funding of February of 2022 that put a significant amount of capital into the business for us to continue to invest in R&D. I think we'll see other competitors enter the market. And as an innovator and entrepreneur, I'm excited about that. I welcome that. I think innovation and competition is good. It creates and drives further innovation in the market. And it also, more importantly, it creates awareness of the problem we're solving. And the market is large enough for more than one player. I feel really confident and excited that in this type of a period in economic uncertainty, you will start to see a lot of entrepreneurial creativity and new companies be formed and technology created. So I think that's maybe less of a risk, more of kind of an excitement for us and a challenge for us to continue to innovate, continue to deliver value to our customers, and then continue to be a leader in direct procurement.
Yeah. And if everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for SourceDay?
Keep delivering value to our customers. I mean, we've been venture backed, which means we've raised capital from venture capitalists and growth equity funds over the years. We've raised just under $60 million since inception. I think we'll continue to innovate and develop. We've made significant investments in the last 18 months in our product and data to make sure our customers are getting more value. I think in this market, we're going to continue to be efficient and lean and focus on growth and value for our customers. More than likely, we'll continue to raise capital to continue to fuel the business and see where the future takes us. We've got several strategic partnerships that we're real excited about that are going to help continue to grow our customer base and expand our reach into the market.
Yeah. And I would like this next section, I call it my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and we'll see what we get. First question, I would like to open it up. What's particularly hard about your job today?
That's a great question. I've got 3 young kids and a wife that does all the hard work raising the family. I think it's balancing that with the 115 SourceDayers that we support mostly in North America and then, the customers and making sure we're exceeding our customers' expectations. I try to strive to create a great and fun place to work. And I think that continues to be my focus. And it's certainly not without significant effort. So continually focused on my work-life balance, but keeping our team members challenged and motivated every day is a big piece of my focus.
Yeah. Well, what's something I would love to ask this question? What's something you spend a lot of time on that you would like to spend less on? And then something you spend less time on that you would like to allocate more to?
That's good. I'd love to spend less time looking at the numbers. We were fortunate to just hire our first full-time CFO. We had a fractional CFO since inception. So our new CFO joined about 6 weeks ago, and I'm excited that I'll have somebody in the seat full-time to help, whereas I spent a lot of time looking at the numbers and planning and doing FP&A. And I think all of that stuff is very interesting, but I'd rather work on the business and focus on growth and team and employees. You get more into keeping our culture, SourceDay great.
Yeah. And I guess more broadly speaking about kind of just the overall system of buyers and suppliers and running, it's not like it's a two-sided marketplace because there's this interjection of technology for SourceDay, which is so fascinating, connecting two parties. What are the challenges for other founders out there who find themselves building something similar about building for two different consumers at the end of the day? It's almost like two different businesses that you're building for. How do you manage which one to focus on, and how do you kind of align everyone's expectations into one product? What are the challenges you baked, and how do you overcome with that?
Yeah, all of them are challenges. Building a marketplace is really hard. I think we saw that with all of the amazing consumer marketplaces that exist today with Airbnb and Uber and all of the others that have just created such incredible categories and leaders. In a business enterprise, marketplaces are even more challenging because you now have two business entities needing to do business, and you're trying to change how they did business for the last 50, 60, 100 plus years. So change management becomes incredibly hard. And I think the best thing that organizations can do for themselves, that we've at times even lost our way on this and trying to innovate too fast, is listening to your users, right? Not just your paying customers, but the users of the platform that are on the other side of the network that may be using it for free, but they need to get value out of it as well.
Yeah. And thinking about kind of, because it's so reliant, and a lot of the information is relying on understanding other solutions, other platforms to kind of create this aggregate of information. Have you found yourself in a position where it's been challenging if somebody's, say, not within a certain network, if you have a buyer who's not within a certain, maybe not using the ERP system or vice versa on the supplier side? Is it challenging to get people kind of integrating in technology if they haven't used some type of system in the past?
Absolutely. I mean, that's probably one of our biggest challenges. And as I mentioned earlier, we run into suppliers that still prefer to print, handwrite, scan, and fax. And I think that was good, right? For a long time, that was the technology that they had. But in this day and age, there's so much more you can do with your time if you use the tools that are available to you and become a more strategic partner to your customers. And honestly, those that don't adopt these technologies like SourceDay and really evolve and change into the future are going to have a hard time hiring. I think one of the biggest challenges that they'll struggle with is how many students and kids getting out of high school and higher education are wanting to go to a job where they're going to have to print and fax and scan POs. It's probably zero, right? So you need technology that's going to give these workers that you need in your organizations the interest level and the data and kind of the tools to help make them more successful and get out of the nuts and bolts of the organizations and actually be strategic to the company.
Yeah, that's an amazing point, which is the whole hiring process and attracting talent and being kind of, you don't have to be cutting edge, you don't have to be innovative, but at least up to date with whatever is being commonly used to enable your workforce. And in so many companies, the companies that have adopted seem to be doing way better exponentially than those who are slow to adopt in so many different ways. Yeah. The last couple of questions I always like to ask, because I love how founders extract information from the knowledge that they ingest, whether it's early in your career or now. What books or people have influenced you the most?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I say from people, it's definitely my parents. They have driven me. My father was never an entrepreneur per se, but he was always a financial leader at organizations founded by early stage entrepreneurs. And I learned a lot watching him, build his career through several organizations that had successful exits, and him and my mother, who worked hard and tirelessly to put my sister and I through school and give us the education that we were capable and fortunate to get. So I think very much owe everything to my parents and the support infrastructure that I have around me as an entrepreneur. I don't know that I should do a shameless plug here. As of the day we're filming this, we're actually going to be launching our own book tomorrow. So I'm excited about the launch of that book. My co-founder and I wrote about our stories. It's called Startup Lessons Learned Along the Way. But I also really loved Hard Things. And then Tony Pace's book on culture, Delivering Happiness. Sorry, I just flipped my mind. But Delivering Happiness is an incredible book for founders. If you care about culture and if you want to build an organization that people want to be at and that want to be proud about and excited about coming to work, we give that book to our employees as a part of onboarding.
Amazing. And you have to give us the link to where our audience could go get the book that you and your founder wrote. I think it'd be folks that kind of share that content and even get some feedback on what they enjoyed about it. And any way the audience can help, I'm sure they'd be happy to. But last question is, I want to make sure we didn't leave anything on the table before we give a chance to give us your plugs and LinkedIn and all that stuff. Is there any question I didn't ask you that I should have, or that you would have liked to answer? Did we leave anything on the table yet?
No, I think I would just leave it with put people first, right? One of the things I always tell early stage founders that I mentor is you got to be passionate about the business you're building and be excited about doing it for non-monetary reasons. And if you love what you do and you get excited about what you do, great people will come work with you on that path. And then the monetary things, if you care about that, they'll come if you're successful, and stay focused on what you care about most.
Yeah. Fall in love with the work. I think it is such a powerful message, because it drives all the other outcomes. And And it's funny, I just talked to another founder who quoted a Bill Walsh quote, which is the standard and expectations of performance and how those expectations lead into the outcome. So it's awesome to hear kind of a similar anecdote from you, but people driven as companies are focusing on that. I think that's the right thing to do and it's a collaborative effort. But I'll stop my rambling here. It's been such a pleasure. I know we're a little bit late on time, but it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, Tom. Last little bit is, where can we find you as a founder? Where can we support SourceDay as a company? Give us your LinkedIn's, your Twitters, your website. Where can we be a part of it and connect it?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a SourceDay YouTube page. We also have our LinkedIn, but myself as well, Tom, Kieley, Tom Kieley. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Amazing. Tom, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. And I hope you enjoyed yourself on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
For